Hello, hello. It's Friday. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are in the world. Welcome to this live stream. I am utterly delighted to have you here. Some of you may have been around here before. I occasionally go live, and I've, in particular, previously gone live a lot on LinkedIn, less so on YouTube, with my dear friend Miha Gobek. She's taking a break for the summer, and I thought there's so much I want to talk about, so I've decided to start a series. So we are here. I have several of these coming your way on Fridays, starting with this one. So hello, I'd love it if as you're joining, as you come in, share where in the world you're joining from. I'd actually love it if you popped in the chat and told me why you're here. What is it that you're hoping to learn? Because I would love to hear from you today about what you're hoping to learn, what you're hoping to do, anything like that. Like, so just come in there with what's going on. Let me know that you can hear me as well. That would be very useful because you never know with this technology. Sometimes it's helpful, sometimes it's not. But let's start off with what is going on here. If you've ever sat in a meeting and said something super smart, and then watched as someone else rephrased it with buzzwords, and suddenly they sounded like the strategic thinker, and you're thinking, what just happened? I want you to know you are not alone. The problem isn't your ideas, it's how you're framing them. The problem is, though, we think it's all about the buzzwords. And so then we start using buzzword bingo. And that's something I just want us to let go of. So let's be honest. We've all heard someone string together a sentence like, will align cross-functional synergies to deliver scalable impact at velocity. And you thought, oh, wait, what did they just say? If you've ever worried that you need to talk like that to sound strategic, you don't. I really, really want you to hear that. You really, really don't. Right? I want you to know that you can be strategic without all the buzzwords, without all the lingo. Let's be honest. I want you to know that this is not strategic, but I want you to know what is strategic. So let's break all of this down in this session. So I've got like 25 minutes worth of content. I want you to feel free to hop into the chat and ask me questions. So as I said, as I started, if you've got a specific reason why you're here, maybe a specific situation, I want you popping it in the chat now so I can make sure I get to it. Just put it in there, like ask the question. There are no bad questions. I will do my best to get to everything that's asked. So pop in and also let me know where in the world you're joining from and let me know that you can hear me as well. Oh, it's so important. I did do a quick tap on my microphone before I started, but that's only good on my end. My end says it's working, but let me know if it's working on your end too. So let's start with what does it mean to actually be strategic? And I think this is something that's so misunderstood. First up, strategic isn't about knowing everything. It's about how you think and how you communicate. It's not knowing everything. And I think this is a mistake so many of us make. We think I'm not strategic enough because I don't know enough. I'm not in the weeds enough. I'm not technical enough. I'm not senior enough. There's all these I'm not enough. Being strategic is not about being the smartest person in the room. It's not about knowing everything. It's not about having an answer to everything. It's not about having the perfect plan. Strategic leaders don't win by doing more. They win by thinking at a different level, a higher level specifically. Strategy is how you leverage. It's your foresight. It's alignment with bigger goals. So yes, where's like alignment? Do come in here. But alignment with what? At its core, strategy is about asking what's the best use of my time, my team's time, the business resources, so that I can achieve the biggest impact. It's strategic thinking is your ability to anticipate, not just react, to make choices based not just on today's problem, but tomorrow's opportunities. I like to think of strategy as a framework of three things. It's your impact, plus your intentionality, plus your insight. You want to approach everything that way. Impact, intentionality, insight. Leaders who are strategic ask great questions. More than they give perfect answers. It's really about how you question things. And a lot of us think we're strategic, but we're falling flat. So I'd love to hear in the chat if you think you're strategic. Just give me a thumbs up. I'm strategic. Then give me a sad face if you've ever had any feedback where somebody's basically saying either explicitly or insinuating that you're not strategic enough. Give me a sad face. Maybe you think you're strategic, but there's a sad face. Because I think sometimes we are seen not as we're actually appearing because of the words we use. So today is a little bit of like explaining what it really means to operate strategically, thinking like a strategic executive, as I want you to train to do, but then also to communicate that way, because there's no point in communicating strategically if it's not based on strategy. And there's no point, well, there's not no point. It's unhelpful because it's holding you back to be strategic, but not know how to communicate strategically. And so I want to bring the two things together today. So a thumbs up if you think you're strategic, maybe a thumbs down if you don't, and you're like, I don't know what it means. And a sad face if you've ever been told you're not strategic enough, or somebody said that to you, insinuated it. You've kind of had that idea, but nobody's quite come out and said it to you. Maybe something like, give me an insight to where your head's at in the comments. Okay. What I want to do is really help you understand that to be seen as strategic, you need to demonstrate you're seen beyond the task at hand. So, just as an example, I've been working with a client for a few months now. And back in, I gosh, March or April, she came to me. Her boss had given her this task too. She's in charge of rolling out a customer success program in North America. She's been asked by her boss to come up with a plan to roll it out in EMEA. And she's like, I'd love some feedback on this. This always goes down really badly with my boss. He never seems to understand what I'm saying. I was like, okay, let's go through your slide deck. Let's go through your document. And she's like, well, I need a slide deck and a document. I was like, well, you need one or the other. I don't really care which. I'm not a fan of slides, but your boss is. So maybe let's talk his language. So she prepped me a slide deck and we went through it. And the thing that really struck me, and I think she would agree with this now with a bit of a chuckle, everything in there was tasks. It was like, this is what I did in North America. This is what we're going to do in EMEA. Right? She missed the strategy. It was just tactical. So I got her to then ask a whole load of questions. What does your boss actually want to roll out in EMEA? Why? Why are they doing this? Like, why is it even important to the business? It's expensive. You've been told there's no headcount and you're going, eek. It's expensive. You know that because you're asking for headcount to do it. So what is the business case? Why is your boss even caring about this? That's the first thing to understand. Why is this something your boss is even asking you to do? The bigger picture. Then ask, what would success look like? Does your boss have an idea of it? Do you have an idea of it? What metrics, dollars, revenue, ARR, profit, what they after? And her job is customer success. It was kind of hard sometimes to tie that immediately to revenue. And I know if you work in engineering, if you work in finance or HR, it's like my job doesn't tie to revenue. It does. Believe me, it does. You just got to figure it out because, and I say you just got to figure it out. It's hard to do. But ultimately, your function exists to support the company. The company is there to make money. We live in a capitalist society. Even if you're in a nonprofit, at the end of the day, the amount of revenue that the nonprofit brings in allows you to do more programs. So ultimately, you really do care about dollars, right? So I want you to think like, what is it that you are doing? But let me get back to my story, right? So I then asked her to focus on each action she thought of doing. What were the results in North America? What does she think the results would be in EMEA and why? Is it different for North America? If so, why? If it's not, if so, why? And she's thinking really hard at this point. She's like, there's so much here. I was like, yes, this is strategic thinking. Is what works in North America moving the needle in EMEA? If not, why not? If it does, why? Understand why you're transitioning this program over for each tactic. And then look at how you roll it out. One thing at a time. What would you pick first and why? What might happen if you do that? What are the dependencies? Can you do that first? What is a relatively easy and cheap thing to roll out that might give you early success to justify more investment? What is your game plan? It starts as a guess, but then you feed in your observations and your insights and you come up with a better rollout strategy. This took her so much time. She was so frustrated with me. I'll just be honest with you on this. She was frustrated with me when I pushed her so hard. This is like 2 weeks worth of work. But what happened is she presented this to her boss, and the first time since she's been working for this boss, she's worked for this boss for like 10 years, right? The first time he went, that's great. She was like floored. She was like, wait, hold on, what just happened? And then she had permission to roll it out. She started rolling it out on the 1st of May. and she had metrics to track. And it's now end of June at the point of me doing this LinkedIn Live, and she's been given full headcount now. She was told she'd get no headcount, but what she's able to do in just 8 weeks is she's been able to demonstrate success. She's been able to demonstrate, like, I rolled this out and it did this. Now, if we roll it out further, give me headcount, we'll make more money. And I'm now going to roll this piece out and make more money. And it's just worked. It's just happened. Here's the story behind this story. She built communication tools that showed her alignment with the company's bigger picture. When you're seen as strategic, when you connect your ideas with the company's ideas, the company's goals, the customer outcomes, the long-term vision, you're doing strategic thinking by saying not just what, but why, right? Tactical is the what. The why is the order, the reason, the metrics, the high value. When we're talking in terms of communication, it means using phrases such as, here's the impact we will have. This ties into our Q3 goals by. I'm seeing a trend that could affect our long-term positioning. And strategic leaders ask great questions, not just giving answers. So she was asking those questions because I was telling her to, but she's now learned to ask those questions. What's the business case? Why do you care about this? What would success look like? What has worked where and why? What was the small things and the big things that didn't work? Actually, something I didn't mention as a result of this, she actually dialed back some of the work in North America because when she looked at it, she's like, I don't know why we're doing that. Yes, great. As a strategic thinker, you ask really great questions of yourself and the people around you, and you make better decisions. You change processes and practices because you've got that bigger picture vision. One of the fastest ways to shift how you're being perceived is to ask bigger, better questions. For example, what's the long-term trade-off if we say yes to this now? How does this align with where we want to be in 12 months? What will success look like across departments, not just for us? The most strategic people in the room aren't always the loudest. They're the ones who reframe the problem in a way no one else saw coming. Okay, let's talk buzzwords. Excuse my language here, language warning, a bullshit bingo. That might sound strategic, but it rarely lands that way. Let's call it out. Leverage, synergies, ecosystems, alignment, value add, mission critical. These buzzwords are everywhere. And sometimes these words have a place, don't get me wrong. But too often they're used as a shortcut to, I want to sound smart, instead of anything meaningful. These words are vague, and that vagueness means that you aren't being clear, and clarity is power. So I want you to pop in the chat and give me a yes if you've ever thought about bullshit bingo. If you thought, what is it that I've said that maybe was just me trying to say I'm great? I noticed in the chat that if one of you at least is struggling with sound, it looks like only one of you. So I'm hoping you can just refresh the page. We are also live on YouTube as well. If you're having problems with the sound, maybe it will work there. But it looks like only one of you. So I'm going to assume it's your end, my love, not my end. But I would love to know in the chat, have you been tempted by a little bit of bullshit bingo? Because you're just so frustrated. Put a yes in the chat if you've ever been tempted. Maybe be brave and tell me, how did it really go? That would be interesting. Here's the thing, you know this, buzzwords don't move the decision forward, but sometimes the person that says the buzzword seems to get more traction. It's so frustrating, which is why we get tempted, right? But if somebody says, we need better alignment, what do they actually mean? Alignment between whom? Around what? What are we talking about? Buzzwords are empty phrases. Clear language creates action. So I want you to bookmark this. Here we go. Instead of we need alignment, you want to say this project only matters if it drives X outcome. Are we all agreed on that as a priority? Instead of saying, let's circle back on that, try saying, I propose we revisit this after key milestone so we have a better data to decide. Instead of saying, we'll leverage our core competencies. I mean, what the hell does that mean? Try saying, we've consistently seen success when we do X. So I suggest we double down here. Instead of saying it's low hanging fruit, I'm guilty of this one, I tell you. Instead of low hanging fruit, try saying this is a fast win that builds momentum while we tackle the bigger challenge. You're explicitly calling out what it is. Instead of saying, let's create a synergistic solution, try saying, I think we can solve both teams' needs with a shared approach that does X and does Y. Clarity builds confidence. Buzzwords build barriers. Sounds so cliche. Maybe that's a buzz phrase. Clarity builds confidence. Buzzwords build barriers. And here's the double whammy for us, right? If you are struggling as a woman in tech, if you are hitting the I'm the only woman in the room situation, I'm not taken seriously situation, we are underestimated as leaders. It sucks. It's why I have a job. Otherwise, I would have to reposition myself as a general executive coach. I have a job partly because as women, we have to work twice as hard and we're underestimated. You cannot afford to hide your thinking behind big words. You have to show your value way more than every man in the room simply because of the unconscious bias that's going on, right? You have to use clear, direct language that makes you sound more strategic as well as being more strategic. You've got to be strategic and sound strategic. If someone can't repeat what you said, they aren't going to act on it. That's the real test of strategic communication. At the end, I'm going to give you a task, which is to rewrite your last status update with intent in mind. I'm going to walk you through what I mean by that. But I want you to just be thinking about this. I want you to try using some of the phrases I've shared to change the intent of your status update from tactical to outcome oriented to situation oriented to showing people why it matters. Okay, I've got 3 shifts to make that are instantly going to help you sound more strategic. Again, pen, paper, let's go. Shift number 1, you've got to lead with why something matters, not the process. So most of us, especially when we're high performers, which if you're listening to this, you likely identify as a high performer in some description or other, right? Especially high performers, we like to talk about what we've done, not how we're solving it, right? Strategic leaders, it's why that matters. So if you're a high performer, you're like, oh my God, I'm so excited by this. I've done this, I've done this, I've done this. It's very like, I did. Why? You've got to think about why first. This instantly shifts and reframes from a task person to a business thinker. So this is the first thing I get people to do when they've had the feedback of you're not strategic enough. I'm like, let's just talk about why things matter every single day. Before you say what you're working on, open with impact. Open with that decision-making lens. This matters because it touches 3 million in ARR. We're seeing churn in this segment. This will address that head on. This risk, if left unchecked, could delay this delivery, right? Here's what's at stake. This matters because. That's shift number 1. Shift number 2, start with outcomes, not activities and tactics. No one wants to see your to-do list. Your boss thinks they want to see your to-do list, but they don't really. They want to see that you've achieved what's keeping them awake at night. Tactical thinkers talk about what they've done. We updated documentation, we ran the QA, we launched this test. Strategic thinkers lead with the result. We reduced onboarding by 30%. We prevented a support spike by fixing the issue before release. Even in everyday updates, I want you to ask yourself, what changed because of what I did? So if you've got any meetings today, I want you to go into that meeting a little bit more prepared with, why did I do that? Right? Think about like what has been the outcome of doing that. You might not know yet. And this is another thing to change your thinking, actually, because by asking these questions of yourself, you're going to be so focused on outcomes, you're going to make better decisions. I want you to ask yourself what changed. That's how you're going to sound like an executive. There's a nice little trick here. Think of outcome, process, next step, or risk. Most of the time, most of us think process, it's done. No, outcome, process, risk, or next step. Outcome, process, risk, or next step. Okay, the third shift I want you to make, big picture. I want you to anchor in the big picture. Strategic people don't talk in isolation, they speak in systems. Every update, idea, or proposal should tie back to something bigger, your company goals, department metrics, customer needs, future vision statement. When you show how your work connects to strategic priorities, you become part of the executive conversation rather than the person that the executive goes, I got to talk to her so I know what to say. This is how you get pulled into executive meetings because your boss goes, oh, she just knows what she's talking about. I just need her in the room. It makes my life easier. If you talk like this for 6 months and you've got a half decent boss, they will start pulling you into the next level meetings. If you don't talk about the big picture, it's very hard for them to pull you in because you just derail the meeting, right? There are toxic bosses out there who don't pull you in, but actually they're fewer and further between. I think a lot of bosses don't pull team members in because they don't know how to explain what's missing. And they know if they bring you in the room, you're gonna derail things, and it's uncomfortable for them because they're not actually good leaders. They don't know how to train you. They don't know how to coach you. They just know it's not right when you're in the room. So give them the right stuff. Tie yourself to what matters. Examples for you. This ties into our Q3 focus on customer retention. Here's how this delivers on our long-term growth strategy. If we invest here, we're de-risking a major revenue stream here. Ideally, everything would be backed up by numbers, by the way, but you can't always do that in every situation. Okay, 3 shifts. Let me just recap for you. Always start with the why it matters. Make it relevant. Frame your updates around impact, not activities. And then connect the dots up, anchor it in the bigger picture. If you start doing those 3 things, people will start listening to you differently, not just as someone who gets things done, but as someone shaping what gets done and why. We've had at least one lady brave enough to share with us in the chat that she's adopted buzzwords, usually because the leader has used them and I figured that was preferred language. Yeah, we have these role models around us. And I don't think, as I said, I think a lot of bosses actually don't know how to train and coach in this. And so you've just got role models around you who are just like flying by the seat of their pants. So let's get this right. Let's dial this in, okay? Okay, here are some phrases to build your credibility because your language is your leadership. You don't just think differently, you've got to speak differently. Phrase number 1. Here's what I see as the biggest risk/opportunity. This shows you're recognizing patterns. You're using your critical thinking, which is a core leadership set of traits. It invites strategic conversation, not just reporting. And you can use this to frame every status update. So, for example, we've hit the milestones, but the biggest risk now is that adoption will stall unless we address this onboarding friction. You've done the thing, but you've addressed the next risk. We're on track, and I see an opportunity to use this momentum to pilot a cross-team solution. Those 2 are, I've got them written down because those are real examples. I've had clients, we do sometimes work on their weekly update because it's just not hitting the mark. It feels like a little bit of like micro coaching, but sometimes I need to do that with a client. They've got a really bad relationship with their boss. And so we'll dig into like, what are you writing in your weekly update? And those are exact phrases that we've used to improve weekly updates. So there you go. These things really do work. Okay, the next strategic set of phrases. This is worth doing if it achieves insert outcome. So this is the outcome anchoring, right? The goal anchoring. This is saying, I know where we need to go. I'm going to do this because it immediately signals executive thinking that you're doing things because they matter rather than because you're doing them. Okay. Your boss might not understand this because a lot of bosses aren't strategically anchored. This is where I've seen people skip bosses, right? You don't just get promoted, you skip your boss. I certainly did that one. Made a few people uncomfortable. I did move jobs to do it, but I skipped 3 levels at once. And it was because I shifted my language. I was already thinking this way, but I shifted my language and people started seeing me as an executive. What it does is encourage the right kind of prioritization conversations. It shows that you explore feature sets. It shows that you're driven by what matters to the company. It shows that you are understanding why you'd focus effort on certain things. Okay, the third phrase. What decision will have the most downstream impact? This shows you're thinking beyond the moment and looking at systemic effects. It helps leaders focus, especially in meetings full of noise, competing options. It's a great way when you're in cross-functional situations, when you're trying to weigh trade-offs. Yeah. So a couple of examples. We could fix this one user path or shift the experience to the entry point. What decisions here will have the most downstream impact? That's a great question to ask your team. A great question to show your team needs to be strategic too. You're getting them to answer strategic questions you're positioning them with. Another example, if we say yes to this, what will that change 2 months from now? What decision today shapes that future? Again, getting your team to think outside the box. These are actually questions I get execs to ask other execs in a peer-based situation, ELT, for example. I'll be like, these are the questions you should all be asking each other, because a team of executives, part of the job of an executive is to challenge the other executives because they don't have anybody else at their level who knows what they know. So a great executive is challenged every day by the other members of the ELT, even though they're not experts. And part of that is just thinking strategically and encouraging each of you to think strategically. So these apply all the way up there, all the way. Okay, a few bonus phrases. Here's what I'm optimizing for. This solves the symptom, but what's the root cause? What's the cost of doing nothing here? How does this help us move faster and smarter? What problem are we trying to solve? And is this the right one for solving it right now? These shift you from being seen as a doer to a decision maker. They frame you as someone who isn't just reacting, but you're thinking upstream, downstream, sideways. You're thinking all over. And they're showing that you're playing the long game and not just the short game. And that's exactly what an executive is paid to do. Okay, let's just wrap this up because I know we're running out of time with a few things to do to practice this day to day. So the first thing I want you to do is review your next meeting agenda. And I want you to shift from update to insight. Every meeting is a chance to sound more strategic, but most people waste it giving status updates. So before your next team meeting, stakeholder call, one-on-one, look at what you're going to say and ask, am I showing an update or am I delivering insight? What trends are emerging? What risk or opportunities am I seeing? What context might others be missing that you can surface here? Spend some time preparing. Next, I want you to ask yourself, how can you shift to the framework of, instead of process, done, outcome, process, ask or risk, or what's next, right? Outcome, process, and then what's the next step? Start with what changed, not what you did. Outcome, what's the business result or insight? Process, what action did you take? Ask, next step, what's the decision or support or risk? What do I need? What do we need to do next? So I want you to really think about that structure in every conversation you have. The third way to start implementing this right now. You might not like this one. This is so good, but you might not like it. I'm going to ask you to record yourself before a team update or a major meeting. I want you to record yourself, and you might be thinking, oh my God, record myself. Because you're then going to listen back and ask, did I lead with outcomes? Did I connect to bigger goals? Did I say anything that would stick with someone after the conversation? You want to look for filler words, over explaining, defaulting to process. I want you to practice 30-second versions of the same update, recording them and seeing if you've got that clarity and impact. Is it outcome focused? Is it anchored? How are you looking at it? Okay. I have some bonus little pieces for you. First of all, 5 minutes a day to be strategically prepping for every meeting. 5 minutes, that's all you need. What does this room care about? What insight do I need? But you need to put aside 5 minutes. I actually spend 30 minutes a day prepping for meetings. I have a lot of meetings. I go through my schedule and like, what do I need to prep for? And I want you to be strategically thinking during that prep. It's a second bonus habit to build. Build a wins and insights tracker, not just a to-do list, but wins and insights. Reflect on the impact you've had every week. This is also great, by the way, when it comes around to promotion or interviewing. Everything I've said today actually really applies to your interview technique too. I spend a lot of time coaching job hunters on interview technique. And one of the biggest things is talking strategically like this. Most of us don't do it. I've got 3 clients. I'm actually going to write a post about this. I've had 3 clients in the last 5 weeks land jobs in 5 weeks. That's not correct. I've had 3 clients who have landed a job in 5 weeks or less in literally the last 2 weeks. It's incredible. In the current market, that is incredible. And all of them have done this strategic thinking prep work ahead of interviews. There's various other pieces that go into this puzzle, which is why I'm going to write a LinkedIn post about it. But this kind of operation is what gets you in the door interview. Okay, let me summarize where we're at because this is like being so much goodness. I've got so much more I want to dig into, but I'm trying to keep it to 30 minutes. I want you to let me know in the chat if you've loved this, if you would like to have another one. And by the way, I have put together a little cheat sheet on the phrases and the thinking from today. If you would like a copy of that, drop me a DM with your email address and I'll send that over to you. I would love to help. But I don't want to like spam everybody. So if you want it, let me know. So let me just recap. First of all, we dug into what strategic thinking actually means, what it means to speak that way rather than just about buzzwords and jargon, the jargon and its noise, how clarity rather than jargon really builds your credibility. Then we talked about 3 simple shifts, leading with why it matters, talking outcomes over activity, and always anchoring in that big picture. Then we came up with some strategic phrases to start using straight away, that language that positions you as a decision maker, not just a doer. And then finally, I've just given you some tips to start building this in every single day as a habit, not just a talent, but a real habit. I want you to know one final thing. You are already strategic. The work now is making sure your language reflects that. Now, what I do see is when you start using this language, you start being even more strategic. But you're probably already strategic, but people just aren't seeing it. This is about making sure people see what's possible, and then you're just going to level up as you do it. So I want you to ask yourself, what are you going to do starting today? Final little bit of piece of housekeeping, actually 2 pieces of housekeeping. First of all, next week is 4th of July. So that means 2 things. One, I was going to do this again next Friday and I realized it's July 4th. So the next session is going to be in 2 weeks' time. And we're going to be diving into think like an exec, strategic framing for women who do too much. So we're going to be talking about how to shift from being the go-to problem solver who's dumped on to being the person who has the voice because she's strategic. Having the ability to follow up from firefighting to execution that gets you noticed. It's going to be another great session, so make sure you look for that. I will put a link to that session in the chat for this after today's session. And then the final thing, because next week is July 4th, I've actually got quite an empty calendar. So I do a limited set of free complimentary strategy sessions every week. And I've got more next week than normal. I was really surprised by this, and then I was like, oh, it's July 4th. That's why. So I've got more time in my calendar. So each week, Women in Tech, there is an opportunity to get 45 minutes with me, dig in what's working, what's not working, whether that's your job hunt, not being seen as promotion worthy at work, struggling with how to speak up, whatever it is. If you would like a complimentary strategy session, make sure you have a look, book yourself in. As I said, there's a limited number each week, but it's my way of giving back. So go and have a look at my calendar and book yourself in. I would love to know if you've enjoyed this. But other than that, have a wonderful rest of your day and enjoy your weekend. And I will see you in